Moving into our new house was a big deal for my husband, Eric, and me. The moving truck arrived early on a warm summer morning, and we spent the entire day carrying boxes into the house. By nightfall, we were both exhausted and happy to finally have a place to call our own. The very next day, our new neighbor, Mary, came over to introduce herself. She looked to be in her mid-50s, about the same age as my mom, which made me feel a bit more relaxed around her. She brought a homemade apple pie and said she was happy to have new people in the neighborhood. She had a warm smile, and there was a gentle, caring tone in her voice. When she saw that we were still unpacking, she even offered to help, but I politely told her we could manage. Over the next few days, Mary always seemed to be outside, waving at us whenever we pulled into our driveway or stepped out onto the porch. Sometimes she would walk over just to chat about the neighborhood, the local grocery store, the best routes to avoid traffic, and the annual block party that everyone looked forward to. She seemed genuinely nice. Yesterday, she knocked on our door again, this time holding a tray of freshly baked lasagna. "I hope you like Italian food," she said with a friendly grin. Eric and I were truly grateful. We hadn't had time to cook a decent meal since we moved in. But then, out of nowhere, Mary began asking questions about our basement. "Need help down there?" she asked in a casual voice. "How did you set it up? I'd love to see it sometime." I remember feeling a little confused. The basement was mostly empty except for a few boxes we hadn't opened yet. I brushed off her questions with a simple, "Oh, it's just a mess right now. We'll get to it eventually." Mary gave me a nod and a small smile, but there was a curious sparkle in her eyes that didn't quite go away. Later that afternoon, I left Mary in the living room for a moment to grab some water from the kitchen. When I came back, Mary was gone, and the front door was wide open. I didn't think much of it at first, guessing she had decided to leave. But then I heard a strange noise coming from downstairs, a soft scraping sound. My heart pounded as I headed to the basement door. It was ajar, and I could hear footsteps on the wooden steps. The basement light was on, even though I was sure I had turned it off earlier. I walked down carefully, and there she was, Mary, rummaging through one of our half-open boxes. She looked like she was searching for something specific, her hands shuffling through old photo albums and clothes. "What are you doing?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the cold basement air. Mary jumped, nearly dropping the stack of papers she was holding. Her face went pale. Stammering apologies, she claimed she was just trying to help organize. But her shaky voice and anxious expression told me she had been caught doing something she shouldn't. I told her to leave immediately. She began to cry, mumbling that she was sorry and didn't mean any harm. But I was so angry and confused that I stood firm, pointing to the stairs, signaling for her to get out. Once she had gone, I locked the basement door behind me, my mind racing with questions. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Mary's strange behavior. Why had she been so interested in our basement from the moment we moved in? What was she looking for? Feeling unsettled, I decided to go back downstairs and examine the area where she'd been searching. It was the far corner of the basement close to the foundation wall. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just dusty shelves and half-opened boxes. Then, as I passed my hand along the wall, I noticed a small section that felt a bit loose or uneven. I pressed on it, and to my surprise, the wall shifted slightly. Behind that section of the wall, there was a hidden space. My heart beat faster as I reached inside. I felt something solid, a wooden box covered in cobwebs and grime. Carefully, I pulled it out. It was locked, but the lock was so old and rusted that it snapped off when I gave it a slight tug. I opened the box and froze. Inside, I found a stack of yellowed papers and a set of old photographs. The pictures looked like they were taken decades ago. One photo showed a much younger Mary, smiling wide next to an older man I'd never seen before. Another showed the same man standing in what looked like our basement, holding a small child in his arms. Scribbled at the bottom was a name I didn't recognize, plus a date from 30 years ago. Among the papers, there were letters addressed to Mary and references to a missing child. I also found birth certificates, some with names crossed out or changed. It was confusing, but it clearly involved Mary in some way. Shock washed over me as the pieces began to come together. Mary must have lived in or around this house years ago, and these documents had been hidden away for some reason. Maybe it was a dark family secret she didn't want anyone to know. Now I understood why she'd been so desperate to see the basement. She must have known the box was there, and she wanted to get it back without us finding out. But she had no idea how determined I would be once I discovered her snooping. My hands shook as I stared at the contents of the box. I knew I needed answers, and the only person who could provide them was Mary herself. Without thinking twice, I slammed the box shut and rushed upstairs. My keys were by the front door, and I grabbed them, still trembling with a mixture of fear and curiosity. I got into my car and drove straight to Mary's house, which was only a few doors down. My mind buzzed with questions. What kind of secret was she hiding? What was in those letters? Who was the missing child? By the time I reached her doorstep, night had fallen. Lights glowed inside her windows, and I could see the silhouette of someone moving around in the living room. I took a deep breath and pressed the doorbell. My heart pounded so loudly I wondered if Mary could hear it from inside. When she opened the door, her eyes immediately flicked to the wooden box in my hands. She didn't say a word at first. Her face was filled with dread and guilt. I cleared my throat, trying to steady my voice. "Mary," I said, "we need to talk." And that's where the real story began. I still didn't know what was in all those documents, and I didn't know why Mary had tried so hard to keep them hidden. But I was determined to find out the truth, even if it meant uncovering a dark chapter of her past that she had spent decades trying to bury. So here's my question. If you found secrets like these hidden in your home, would you confront the person responsible, or would you try to stay out of it and protect your own peace? When Mary opened the door and saw the box in my hands, her expression changed instantly. The warmth she'd always worn on her face was gone, replaced by something else: guilt, fear, resignation. She didn't say a word. She stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. Her house was quiet, the living room dimly lit by a single lamp. It was eerily spotless, like someone had spent hours making sure everything was exactly where it belonged. I sat on the edge of the couch, still clutching the box. Mary sat across from me, her eyes never leaving it. I placed it on the coffee table and opened the lid slowly. "I found this in our basement," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Behind a loose section of the wall." Mary didn't respond. She just stared at the contents, at the faded photo of her younger self, at the letters, the certificates, the old documents. Her eyes welled with tears. "You knew it was there," I said quietly. "That's why you kept asking about the basement, isn't it?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." I waited, but she didn't offer anything more. I pressed on. "Who's the man in the photos? And the baby? What's in these letters? Why are their names crossed out on the birth certificates?" She let out a shaky breath and leaned back into her chair, as if carrying a weight she'd been holding for years. "That man was my husband," she said finally. "George. We lived in your house before you did, a long time ago." I stared at her, waiting. "I had a son," she continued, her voice softer now. "But George, he wasn't his father. When George found out, everything fell apart. There was yelling, threats, and then one night, it went too far." Her hands trembled as she wiped a tear from her cheek. "We fought. In the basement. He tried to take the baby from me. I pushed him. He fell. He didn't get back up. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat." "You buried him?" I whispered. She nodded again, slowly. "Behind that same wall, I panicked. I sealed everything away and left, moved across the state, changed my name. I thought the house would be sold and that part of my life would disappear. But you came back." "I didn't plan to, I swear. But when I saw the house was for sale again, I couldn't stop thinking about the box, about what was still hidden there. I just wanted to find it and destroy it. I didn't want anyone else to know." I stared at her, struggling to find words. "That baby?" I asked. "The one in the photo?" Where is he now? Her eyes softened. He's grown. He doesn't know any of this. I made sure of that. He lives a good life. He thinks George left us. And maybe that's for the best. The room fell silent for a long time. I don't know what to do with all of this, I said eventually. You lied to us. You came into our home. You searched through our things. You kept a secret buried, literally, for decades. I know, she said, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I didn't want this secret to hurt anyone else. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Sharp, quick, repeated. We both turned toward it, frozen. Then Mary whispered, "You didn't tell anyone, did you?" I hadn't. Not yet. Another knock, louder this time. She rose to answer it, and as the door creaked open, a voice called out, "Police." We received a call about a possible disturbance. I sat motionless, heart racing. A neighbor must have seen me enter with the old box. Mary turned back to me, her face pale. I stood, walked to the door, and said the words I never thought I'd say. "Officer, there's something you need to see." The officers stepped into Mary's house cautiously, hands resting on their belts. I held out the wooden box, still open, showing them the stack of old documents, the photos, the letters. This was hidden behind a wall in our basement, I explained. Mary, our neighbor, was looking for it. She told me. Her husband died in that basement. Mary didn't resist. She didn't argue. She just stood there, her hands clasped in front of her like someone awaiting a verdict they already knew was coming. The younger officer exchanged a look with his partner. "Ma'am," he said, "we're going to need you to come with us." Mary didn't ask why. She simply nodded and walked quietly to the door. Before leaving, she turned to me. Her eyes were filled with tears. Not panic, not anger, just sadness. "I never meant to drag you into this," she whispered. "Thank you for not turning away." Then she was gone. Later that night, after giving my statement at the station, I returned home feeling like I was walking through someone else's life. The same walls, the same furniture, but nothing felt familiar anymore. The basement now held a darker weight. The police cordoned off the far corner where the hidden space had been. The next morning, forensics teams arrived. I didn't go down there. I couldn't. But I didn't need to. The results came quickly. Human remains, male. Estimated time of death, over 30 years ago. They confirmed Mary's story. A man named George Hadley, reported missing in 1991. Husband, no known children, no real investigation at the time. Just gone. Buried beneath concrete and silence. Over the next few weeks, Mary's name appeared in the local papers. Remains discovered in suburban basement. But the articles were careful. She wasn't vilified. Her past came out slowly. An abusive marriage, a child born of another man, a woman who disappeared after years of fear. Neighbors were shocked, of course, but strangely, many expressed sympathy. Some even said they'd always felt Mary was running from something. She was charged, but given the context and the overwhelming evidence of domestic abuse, the court allowed her to remain under supervised house arrest while awaiting a formal hearing. I visited her once. She looked older, tired. She told me her son still didn't know the full story. She didn't want to ruin his life. "He's a good man," she said. "He has a family, a job. I don't want to be the reason his world collapses." I didn't know what to say, so I said the only thing I could. Then maybe the truth can stay between us. She smiled faintly. Maybe. Months passed. The house stopped feeling haunted. We repainted the basement, covered the wall. We didn't forget, but we didn't let it define our home. And sometimes, when I walk past Mary's house, I see her sitting on her porch, staring into the distance. We wave at each other like neighbors do, but we both know, behind those small gestures, there's a story that no one else will ever fully understand. A secret hidden behind a wall. A life interrupted. And a truth that, once uncovered, changed everything.